Hi, this is Desi D, and welcome to my new channel, Speculative 2 Cents, where we talk about everything speculative. We're going to probably focus on fiction, but we'll do art, we'll do everything. Because why put limits? That's the whole point of speculative. And I am here with October. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm October K. Santerelli, and I am primarily a dark fantasy author. I also write comics for Webtoon. And I am here today to talk with Desi D about one of my favorite speculative 2 cent pieces.
Yes, we're going to talk about adaptations.
I
Do we?
love TV and movies. I love them. And I
Mm-hmm.
especially love them when they're based on books.
Oh, and I love them when they're done right.
That's okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, sometimes they are not done right, but I do really think that adaptations that do have a book behind them of any sort have a stronger storyline than things that were written just to be movies.
Yes. I will caveat that with anime though. Anime has always been kind of both because
That's,
manga and then anime.
I mean, yeah, but which one came first, chicken and egg style? Isn't it usually the manga comes first and then they animate it?
Typically, but they're only like weeks behind each other.
Okay, that's fair. They're very tightly, they're making them up as they go along at the same time. All right, that's fair. Uh, but I feel like it does make a big difference
Hmm.
overall.
And I think it helps because it's a graphic novel, which is already halfway visual. So it's
That's
not
true.
a step.
They're like, as long as we hit these beats, we're good. I really like the TV series and movies. I like mine slightly more bite-sized. Anime series can go on for a long time.
Oh,
Um,
yes. I am definitely a One Piecer, so.
Yeah, right. One Piece. Oh my gosh. But I really did like the live adaptation done by Netflix of One Piece. I've read a little bit, I've watched a very little bit of the anime. I really liked the live action adaptation that they did. And I feel like again, it's because it's based on an existing story.
Hmm.
Um, Netflix is knocking it out of the park with those adaptations, though. They also have a series of unfortunate events, which is where you can really see the difference between a TV series based on books and a movie based on books, because they did one of each for that
Hmm.
one.
Yes.
And have you seen either of them?
I've seen the movie. I have not seen the show yet. It's on my
Oh,
long to watch list.
the TV show was amazing. It really captured the lemony snicketiness of it all. Uh, like how when he's writing it, he's got those a word which here means this and that sort of stuff. They managed to find a way to really pull in that feeling into the TV series, and I feel like we really lost that during the movie. So while Jim Carrey was acting his heart out, Neil Patrick Harris, who produced the Netflix version, he killed it. He made it just like Chef's Kiss. I love that series. I keep rewatching it.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to bump that up on my list then.
Oh, it was so good. And it was great because they each like season, they did 4 episodes that covered 2 of the books, and then in the last season, like they did like 3 seasons. Um, and managed to get through like 2 episodes per book. So there was enough time to get through all the detail in all of these books because they were really detailed. Um, and and I felt like that was the way to do it was mini series it, make it a couple
Hmm.
seasons long. Each episode was about 40 minutes. 45, 40-ish. But they really got to be able to cover all of the detail and add some background information. And they did a really good job of dropping little bits at the end that made you go, what's happening? And tune in again. Um, I watched it as it came out every single time. I was like, a new one, and I was there. I was there.
Oh, I wish I could do that, but I grew up in the 90s where you had no choice. So now I'm like, no, I won't do that anymore. I'm gonna binge the whole thing.
Well, good news. Now you can binge the
Yeah.
whole thing. And it's not actually terribly long because they only did 2 episodes per book. So there's like what, 26 episodes total?
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Hmm.
They also did School of Good and Evil as a movie. And I don't know if you read the book for School of Good and Evil by, hang on, I'm looking for it on my shelf. Chiani, Chinani. Um, but the books themselves were very interesting. And then the movie that Netflix put out captured the essence of it, but it was a movie, so I felt like it did miss a couple of details. But they did a really solid job of covering what was important in that story.
I actually think I did see the movie of that though, and I did like the movie of it. It
I
was
loved the set and the costumes.
yes.
Like sometimes with fantasy adaptations, that can be the thing that they fall short on is they kind of cliche it
Hmm.
more than they get creative. I don't think School of Good and Evil had that problem.
Oh no, the costumes were great in it. The setting was brilliant. I loved that setting.
I know. I loved like the little like they did a really good job with the bridge and there's this evil castle and the good castle and they looked like they shouldn't be anywhere near each other. I loved that. The dichotomy was perfect.
And then of course, I always wanted to go visit the Dark Castle. It just looks so freaking cool.
It looked like fun. Some of the details in the books didn't make it over, obviously,
Mhm.
but um like in the book version of School of Good and Evil, each foyer of the castle um is a photo gallery of their best students, so their heroicest heroes and their most villainous villains.
Mhm.
Um, and and they took that out of the actual like
Oh,
set design, which I thought it would have been really cool to see, but I understand why they did it. That would also be a lot of detail for a movie.
yes.
Um, if it had been like a TV series where we would pass through that space more than a handful of times, that would be different. The School of Good and Evil series is quite long, 6, 7 books. Um, and they only made an adaptation of the first one, and they have no plans to make any further adaptations at this time.
And
Um,
at least they did it right, where you're not dying at the end of the first movie. I hate when they hint that they're going to do more, and then they're like, no, it was not financially worth it. I'm like, what?
they left the thread open at the very end. They had like an arrow with a
Yes.
message on it pop out of nowhere, and we never know what happens. Um, but it wasn't so urgent that I was like, oh God, I really want to see it.
Hmm.
Um, Although it would have been interesting, a very interesting examination because um well, I don't want to spoiler it, but it's no longer good versus evil.
Oh, I was getting that hint from just the first one because I liked how they
Yeah.
played the tropes of really what is good and what is evil.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it was fascinating to see. Um I'm thinking about other adaptations. Shadow and Bone.
Oh, Shadow and Bones, I loved the adaptation of that series. That one I have rewatched several times. I loved it because
I
I love the
I haven't
blade
made
of
it
the
all the way through the second season yet, surprisingly enough. But I really enjoyed the way they married together the storylines
yes.
of multiple books into
Hmm.
one continuous story.
Yes, because I loved the Six of Crows. I'm gonna say once I realized how it was gonna end, I kind of stopped, but that's my problem. If you loved it, great. But I did love it. I truly did. I loved it, especially the first book I loved, but I loved how they blended it in the show. Now that I just thought was amazing. And The Shadow and Bones, I wanted to love the series because I tried to read the books, but I did not like Mal in the books, but I loved him in the show. He was so great.
Oh yeah, no, in the show, I feel like they actually did make some improvements to character on both fronts a little bit.
Yes.
Um, because Alina was a little more passive, I would say, in the books, and they
Yeah.
gave her some more agency in the show.
Hmm.
And Mal was a lot more whiny.
Yes, and he
And
was
they
a lot more little self-centered.
just a little.
Nice.
Yeah, I did really enjoy that. I loved the parts where, because they married in the Six of Crows, they got to explore a little more deeply character and motivation,
Hmm.
um, which was great. It it reminds me of another adaptation in a completely different way. I don't know if you've ever seen Shrek the Musical.
Oh, I have not seen Shrek the Musical.
Shrek the Musical takes the movie and gives the characters a lot more depth. And I didn't like, I thought that was wild the first time I watched it, but Shrek the Musical was fantastic. So if we're talking about adaptations, movie to musical, fantastic, fantastic shift that I did not expect.
All right, I'm
Um,
gonna have to check that out. I was scared to check it out originally. It's like, wait, what are we gonna do?
Oh no, it was great. It turned out really well. I really enjoyed the musical version. Speaking of musicals and adaptations, the book to musical to movie pipeline for Wicked that just
Oh
came out.
yes.
Oh my gosh. The movie has very little to do with the book. In case anybody was wondering, the book is way darker, way more politically motivated rather than interpersonal relationship motivated. But it is also a fantastic story about how propaganda and controlling the narrative can really change a place. Um,
And that's what I love
the
about speculative fiction. Always pushes back against that.
Oh yes. Oh gosh, please. Yeah. Especially in the current political climate, I totally suggest folks check out Wicked
Hmm.
because it's fascinating and remarkably relevant right now.
Hmm.
But they changed it into a musical that covers this lightly, kind of brushes across it, um, and is more about the interpersonal relationship between Glinda the Good and Alphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West. And the movie adaptation they did of the musical, I've seen the musical like 4 times. I love musicals. And then they turned it into the movie. I've read the book before I saw the first musical. Or well, saw it the first time. And so I was like watching the musical and was like, this is fantastic. Not at all what I read, but fantastic. Same thing with the movie. And the visuals that they did for that was fantastic. Oh wow. I don't know if you knew this, but they built all of their sets, like all of those are none of them are CGI. The CGI they did was only with like flying scenes and stuff like that. They built trains, they built schools, they built boats to, float into them. All of that stuff was actually there. And the detail that they put into those sets was so cool.
Yeah,
Um,
it might just be my partialness from being a 90s kid, but I love when they actually build it
oh
instead
yeah.
of CGI it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. Oh man, it was so cool. And there's a magical library that I wish I freaking had in the university in the school at Wicked with like these rotating shelves with ladders and stuff. Like it's so cool. That's actually there, and not all of the books come off, but books do come off of those shelves. And I was like, I could go for that.
Mhm.
I I want a magical rotating spiral bookcase.
Who
Uh,
doesn't?
who doesn't want that? Like, hello.
I
Uh,
definitely need that. Ah.
oh, it was so cool. And yeah, and that was also a really good adaptation. I know that they only covered the first half in like a long movie, and I was like, good, because they're treating it more like a mini series, even though it
Oh,
is a short, relatively short piece.
I think that's
Um,
kind of the key with movies, right? You gotta treat them
yeah.
more like that. That's why, like, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit worked.
Oh my God, if we want to talk about fantastic adaptations, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they did a really good job with, again, they built their sets. They made sure things were real more than they weren't. Um, I don't know if you heard about how they did the Hobbits with the big actors. As soon as I tell you this, you'll notice it, and I'm sorry about that. But they had actual um people with dwarfism being the hobbits in scenes where everybody was together, so you won't see the hobbits' faces when they're with the other actors, and you can see the other actors' faces. Um, And then when they cut, they had this one guy who was really tall. I think they had more than one, but there was one guy who was really tall who they had playing Gandalf and other big people in close-up scenes where it's the face actors of the hobbits are visible. It's this guy who's just really tall, who's on the other side. And they made big rigs for other scenes when they had multiple big people, which are like not quite mech suits.
Ooh.
Like stilts and like extra torso height things to make these people look bigger than the face actors for The Hobbit. The level of detail and dedication that they put into those scenes was fantastic. I know they did that for Lord of the Rings. I believe in The Hobbit they did a lot more CGI. Because I know that Ian McKellen was really upset when he was doing the dinner scene in The Hobbit when he was acting alone in a room
Oh yeah.
and because everybody else was meant to be shorter, so he was the only one who was acting in the set that was sized appropriately to make him look bigger. And he was
Mhm.
like, "I'm sad. This is not what I got into acting for." I believe is the quote of what he said. And so I'm like, I know they did it a lot better for Lord of the Rings, but they also had a lot more time for the Lord of the Rings movies. The Hobbit movies were highly in demand and they cut a few corners. If we're talking about horror adaptations, I feel like the extra stuff that they added to The Hobbit to flesh it out that much took away from the story. It should have been two movies, not three.
Yeah, I can see that with it. But I kind of like how they slowed it down though to really let you explore the world a bit. And I
A
think
bit.
that helped.
Somebody took all three movies and cut a 4 hour super movie out of it
Mm.
and took out a bunch of the extra stuff and extra fluff that they didn't really need. And I really enjoyed that version. So the 4 hour supercut was like, oh, there it is. That's what I was looking for.
I'll have to check out that. I'll have to find it first to check it out. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like reminds me a little bit of anime in a sense, that one anyway, where you have
Mhm.
all the filler to make it go longer while you're waiting. And then you always want and you're excited for when they're going to finally release the version where they cut out the filler. It's like your filler
Yeah.
was great once. Now can we get rid of it?
Hobbit Beach episode was not my favorite. Uh, but they did get to do a lot of really cool visual stuff in The Hobbit. They really pushed the envelope of what cool visual stuff they could do in The Hobbit. The barrel riding fight was so cool, so
Mhm,
cool. And they got that leeway because Lord of the Rings went so well. Um,
mhm.
so there was yeah, so it's like they bought themselves some leeway to fiddle with it. I still like those movies. I still watch those movies. Are they my favorite ones? No, I watch Lord of the Rings way more.
Yeah. Well, Lord of the Rings, it made more sense for how they did it. And I think The Hobbit, they were just trying to mirror the success. So three with
Yeah,
Lord, so three with the Hobbit.
which they didn't need. The Hobbit was one book. It
Yeah,
would have made a great two movies.
yes. But it's Hollywood and they're gonna milk it for every dime they can get.
That's fair. I feel like sometimes that's why the TV adaptations go better, the ones that turn it into TV series,
hmm
um, because they've they've got a longer timeline to get the investment back.
Yes. I
Um,
love the series are usually better because one of the books I really loved was Hunger Games.
ooh,
And the movie adaptation, it was good, but I read the books before, like the first one.
yeah.
I watched the movie. It's like I don't understand how everybody knows what's happening. They left so much out.
Yeah, there was a lot of nuance and stuff that was cut out. They kept the action. But then if we're going into the dystopians, like most people understood what was happening just because the dystopia genre was so big for a while there and so formulaic.
Yeah. But man, the books made that so disturbing.
Oh yeah.
That's the layer that was kind of taken off. I was like, you have no idea how disturbing the scene's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that they we're considering a TV adaptation, like a series adaptation instead of movie based.
Hope so.
Um, I think that would be really interesting. I did think that Divergent did a really good job of hitting all of those notes.
Never saw that, but it's one of those things I got very upset with the way they ended the trilogy, so I didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't really like the end of everything. And
Yeah.
then they only did Allegiant Part 1, the video, well, like for the movies. And I was like, and now no one knows what's happening. But that's okay because literally the first one dominated everything. The
Oh yeah.
second movie went way downhill, and the third movie was so bad that they were
I
like, never mind.
almost feel like that's the same experience I had reading it. Now, for all those people out there who love it, I'm sorry. But the first book, I would love it if I could pretend that was the only book. 'Cause I loved that book so much.
Yeah, it would have been a good stopping point.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I also really I liked the adaptation of The Giver for the
Oh
dystopians.
yeah, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, they did a really good job with color. And the visuals of the memories were really well done. That's another one there where like the way that they frame it went over really well. And I also like that they didn't ever try to keep doing more with the Giver series or anything like that. Like they were
Mhm.
like the Giver and we're done. And I was like, oh, good, because you did good.
Yes. That's
Leave
why
it
I like,
there.
in a weird way, I'm not upset that they canceled Shadow and Bone. I would have loved to see another season, but I was very satisfied where they ended it. Even though,
And the way the whole series ended, I was like,
hmm
it's a good spot. It's a good
yeah,
spot.
it's a good spot. I'm like, I would love another one, but this way I know you're not going to ruin it. Let's just leave it alone.
Yeah. The Maze Runner is another dystopian
Oh,
series that
yes.
they did a really good job, I think, with all of the movies. They were crazy. Um, they ended them well, though, and I really enjoyed the first one especially, but they didn't pull any punches on how messed up some of this was in that one. And I think that was really important for the dystopian genre.
Mhm.
We were talking, and I thought of another adaptation. So right here is the Bridgerton series.
Oh, yeah, that I have not watched. I was warned that is not something I should watch.
Should, as long as you're okay with spice.
Yeah, that's why I was warned not to. I'm okay with certain levels of spice. I have my limits.
It's not okay, it's pretty blatant, but it's not like Game of Thrones blatant.
Yeah,
Um,
Game
it is it
of
is artful spice. But it definitely covers a lot of bases. And it covers them in more detail than the books, which is saying something. Because the books are mm. But as far as the storyline adaptations go for that series, I have found it quite interesting. I really enjoyed those adaptations, the way they shifted um, to include extra storylines and background storylines that made sense for the characters um, was really well done. So,
I've
because
heard
the
good things
books,
about it, but I don't know.
the books mostly focus on like one person at a time, one couple at a time, and then you kind of hear about the others, but they're not there. So with the TV series, what they had to do was be like, well, these people still exist. So now we have to come up with extra storylines for them in the background of this other person's story. And they did a good job of that. And then they added an entirely new mini series for Queen Charlotte,
Mm.
which is it is still spicy, less spicy. If you want to start with something, start with that one, and if you can handle that one, um, and that storyline was beautiful, completely beautiful and well done, and I loved that one. I watched that one more than I watched the actual straight up Bridgerton now.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and that one was great because even though they made it up, it was based on a historical figure, a historical character, like historic romance. They took some liberties, but kept true to the core of everything in the Bridgerton series, which is love. And
Yes.
so by the end of it, you're like, I'm in love with love.
See, for me, I need love stories with a lot of violence in them. So,
Oh, so you
when,
liked Game of Thrones? No.
well, I would have liked the Game of Thrones. It's just the Game of Thrones, I don't mind killing off characters. I'm fine with that. But when I know it's coming and it's always going to be the characters I love, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this ride. It
It was
depends.
very Hamlet-esque.
Oh yeah, no, like there's one where they just killed off a character I absolutely love. I'm not gonna spoil it too much, but it's in My Hero, and I was fine with it. I'm like, it's got to be a great death. If you're gonna kill him, it's got to be good. And then that's what always makes me nervous when I see it coming. I'm like, are they gonna do a good job? Do a good job. So I'm like, I don't
And Game of
know.
Thrones did not always do a good job. Game of Thrones was just like, and now I'm gonna lop your head off, and the end. And you're like,
Yep. So that's why I'm like, It's like I don't know if I could do this one. I'm like, this just seems like it's there just to be mean to me.
just to be mean in general.
And I'm like, I don't mind being mean, but I want you to be mean to the character too, not just to me.
Like
The
it has to have build up, kind of a
yes,
justification to it.
the
Um,
foreshadowing, it's got to be there.
and it's strange in certain stories like that one where when you're looking at the writing behind it, like yes, in every day people are assholes just to be assholes.
Hmm.
People are cruel just to be cruel. People are mean just to be mean. Their motivation is selfishness and money and power, and they don't have any buildup or justification for it. But when you're writing a story and you don't give a villain a motivation, readers don't like it.
I'm gonna say I definitely agree with that, but I think the reason we don't like it is we read this speculative fiction and all that because we want the world to make sense. We live in a world that doesn't. So when we go here, we want it to make sense, and when it doesn't, it depends on the reader. Some readers absolutely love this. I typically am not. I want it to make sense. I'm like, give me a place where I can escape that makes sense.
I read a book where the ending made sense, but I was so furious with the author for using it because I felt like it was lazy writing at that point. It's at the end of a book where this character has built up problems throughout this entire story, and then in comes the rebels who murder half of everybody there. They fight off the rebels, but the half of people who got murdered were the people that she had problems with.
Oh, it was just very nice coincidence.
So she didn't have any more problems. And I was like,
Yeah, I'm like, that's the God in the machine coming and fixing the author's problem.
yeah, I was so mad because the book had such good build up before that. And then I was like, and I'm over it. I'm so over
See,
it.
there's one
Um,
book series that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I do criticize, but I do admit the writing was good, where the author built up to two major battle scenes and had zero battles. I was like, that's amazing. I still am not a fan of the books because they were advertised as a romance instead of a horror, and I think they were a horror, but I'm sure most people who know me know what I'm talking about right now. But I do give a lot of props to that. I'm like, because it's not an easy feat to write up to battle scenes and then have them solved peacefully. That makes sense.
yeah, build up the tension and then let it bleed away in a natural way. I
Yep.
do think that is difficult.
Yeah, and it was in the same book. Two battle scenes, no fights. I'm like, that is impressive.
They should have just Helm's Deeped it.
Hmm.
Let's go. Like,
Oh, that one got an adaptation, and I think the adaptation had to include the fight, but they still kind of erased the fight afterwards.
okay, then can I ask what it is?
Yeah, it's the Twilight series. I don't know if you saw the movies.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, the where the they show up during baseball.
Yeah, in the very last movie, you're about to have that big epic battle, and then it turns out to all be Allison's vision.
Yeah,
Hmm. Showing what would happen if we really do fight, so they decide not to fight.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, the adaptations, I read those books. My mom was a huge Twilight person.
Oh, my
I
sister
read
is, and my cousin.
huge Twilight everything for a couple years there. And the actual like adaptations, the movie adaptations, I actually felt like considering what the actors were working with, as far as the uh Myers used a technique called pants, where you turn a character into a pair of pants that anybody can wear and put their
Hmm.
thoughts and feelings in. And so to take a character that literally was meant to not actually be a character and turn it into a character, socially awkward, kind of very withdrawn. I feel like Christian, is that her name? Kristen or Christian?
Oh, I don't know. I'm really bad with names.
Well, she did a very good job with what she had.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that was probably my biggest complaint about it is I get the technique and the technique worked. Seriously, it worked. I'm just not a
I
fan
even
of the
enjoyed the
technique.
books, and I didn't enjoy the books, you know? Like,
Yeah.
if I pick up that book to read it, I still read it cover to cover every time, even though I'm like, I don't really like this book, but then I'm
Well,
in it and I'm like, I like this book. And then
my
this moment I close it, I was like, I did not like that book. Like,
my thing is what kept me because I read all four of them because my sister and my cousin really wanted me to, so I did. But what kept me into it is I loved all the side characters because I loved how they had characterization. So I'm not a fan of the whole pants thing because I'm reading because I want to connect with characters. And that denied me it, but the side characters were great. And honestly, my other objection was no means no, people. No.
yeah. Still one of the more well done adaptations overall.
Yes, it was. I can say all the things that were great about it. It just wasn't for me. That's all.
It's fair. I'm trying to think of like a lot of the kids' book adaptations have been really interesting to see.
That's like
Um,
the C.S.
Here
Lewis
in
ones.
Denver recently was the Maurice Sendak exhibit,
Ooh.
and he's the author of Where the Wild Things Are,
Oh,
which
okay.
was a hugely popular children's book, which had a movie adaptation, and I hated it. Like I hated it the first time I watched it because I was like, this had to add so much filler that I don't get it.
Hmm.
And it felt like it was trying to be something other than what it had been. After the exhibit, uh, I went back and watched it again, and I liked it a lot better because the part of the exhibit was the movie. They had the Jim Henson costumes right there. Oh, they were so cool. Um, but they had an entire thing where Sendak and the director were talking about putting together the movie and what they were going for, and I was like, interesting. I hadn't seen it since it came out, so I went home and watched it again and was like, okay, now I see what they were doing. I have not watched the Harold and the Purple Crayon adaptation.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
very nervous about it.
I was too. Because my other thing is he made the other superhero movie, which is escaping my brain at the moment, and they just seem to be so similar. That's like, oh
Yeah.
no.
I did not super enjoy the Cat in the Hat adaptation, but you know which adaptation of a kid's book knocked it out of the park? The Grinch.
Oh yes, I loved the Grinch adaptation.
I like both of the most recent adaptations. The
Hmm.
one where Benedict Cumberbatch is the Grinch and the one where Jim Carrey is the Grinch, the live action. Both of them did a really good job of like they added things. Obviously, this was a kid's
Hmm.
book that was like 10 pages long.
Yeah.
Um, they obviously added things, but what they added to each one was nuance and characterization, and it was interesting, and I liked it. Um, so that was a lot of fun. Um, it's really hit or miss with Seuss adaptations. We get a lot of them.
Mhm.
Horton Hears a Who was really good, and then Cat in the Hat was not at all.
Yeah, well, the theme part of it was is the makeup and the design of the cat in the hat was a little on the creepy side.
A little. I really liked the Lorax though,
Mhm.
and yeah, so kids' book adaptations are off the wall, man. They have so little to work with. The fact that they could take this much and make a movie out of it every single time, I'm impressed.
Yes. It also gives them a chance to really own the story though, because it's so little, there's only so much you have to keep. And there's so many things you can do with that. Oh,
That
if we're talking about adaptations, I almost forgot to talk about my absolute favorite adaptation, The Count of Monte Cristo.
I
I
haven't
love
seen.
that. Yo, you gotta see it. It goes from the book to the movie. It came out probably a long time now. I hate remembering I'm older. But it was one of the best revenge movies, and they did add a little to it, but oh, it was so good. His
That sounds
motivation for why he wanted revenge. Even what's her name? I wish I was better with names. But the love interest. She even had a great reason for why she couldn't wait for him. It made perfect sense for the time era. I was like,
oh,
yeah, and in the novels, they didn't give her that reason, other than the fact it was that time era and you can't be a single woman. But this one made more sense of why she did what she did. And it was
mm,
a great adaptation. If you have not seen it, you got to go see that one.
I am gonna have to see it. I bet I can find it. Find it and stream it.
I've got to say that'd probably be my favorite adaptation.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, like, if I had to end with one more really solid adaptation. I mean, I don't know. I was always a big fan of the dystopians. I watch a lot of the kids' movies. Um, Disney adaptations in general, where you have Brothers Grimm stories
Oh yeah.
transformed. Cinderella is one of my
Hmm.
absolute favorite
Oh, I love
fairy tales
Cinderella.
on the planet, and it has been a couple different Disney movies and Cinderella story with Hilary Duff, and there are a million different Cinderella adaptations out there.
I
Um,
think my
and
favorite of those would have to be the okay, I'm hoping I'm getting her name right. Drew Barry. Is it Drew
Drew
Barrymore?
Barrymore Ever
Yes, I
After.
loved Ever After. That was
Oh, Ever
so
After was
good.
fantastic. I watched it for Valentine's Day.
I think
Um,
it's my favorite Cinderella adaptation.
it was beautiful, and it was I liked the approach they had to it where we know the story, here's the truth. Like I love those
Hmm.
adaptations where they're like, you think you know,
Yeah,
but you don't know.
yeah.
Uh,
And I like how they called out Disney a little bit. There's no fairy godmothers.
right.
But I do give Disney credit. They do take very horrible stories and make them seem very, very happy, but they keep a thin line of horror in it.
A thin line, very thin line, moderate amount of horror. Um, I like as an adaptation Into the Woods, which was a musical first, but it is a musical based on adaptations of multiple fairy tales threaded together. And then the movie that came out with Meryl Streep, and that one was just fantastic.
Oh, I don't know if you've heard of the what is it? The Unhappy Ever After series? Um,
Unhappy Ever After. I haven't heard. Is it the
yeah.
Happy Never After series?
Maybe. The way my brain works, it probably switched all that around.
Uh,
Or never. Oh, I wish I was better at these things. My brain's just like, they were there. You'll figure it out later when you're not trying.
I did see like the 3D kid movies versions
Yeah, it's
of like
oh, the
it was
Never
called,
After series. You're correct.
yeah, Happy
Yes.
Never After. Yeah, I
Oh,
thought that was really
this
interesting
one's not a
too.
kid one though. It's Never After series. And basically, this author takes the Disney movie ideas, concepts,
Oh,
it focuses on the villains.
Oh yeah, and there are book series adaptation of the Disney movies.
Yes, but they're not actually the Disney movies. They take like the same themes. Oh, I loved that. I read the Scarred one, and that one I loved. That was so good. And then nobody's good in that book. That's what makes it all great.
I mean, if we want to go to adaptations, The Lion King being Hamlet is a wild adaptation,
Yes. And I love this because it's an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation.
right? I mean, that's sometimes that's how it goes. Like people like to say that there's nothing new in the world anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and technically, I've taken that to heart and I've decided I'm not going to try and write completely original stories anymore. I'm just going to write adaptations. And
Yes.
so people really enjoy my City of Night series or City of Day, City of Night.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just
uh,
started reading that one, so I'm not very far. Don't spoil me.
I won't spoil it, but it is based on a paragraph from the Sinbad, the original Sinbad stories.
Oh, I
So,
love Sinbad.
so it is technically sort of, if you squint, an adaptation.
Um, Everything's an adaptation. I forgot who said it, but they said there's only like six plots in the entire world, and everybody just keeps retelling them. So when you think of it that way, I like thinking of it that way because it takes the complete pressure off of trying to make something brand new. All you have to do is add your little twisted mind to it, and you're good.
My little twisted mind, little twist, big twisted, very twisty.
Hmm. I didn't say how many twists were in there.
So many twisties.
Yeah.
I have more twisties than penne pasta.
Oh yeah, mine's is extremely twisted. I'm like, if there were real mind readers, stay the hell out of my brain. You would not be safe in there. Yeah, it's
Well, that's
fun.
my 2 cents.
Yep, it's a great 2 cents. So, when is your book coming out?
The second book in the Nightfall series, City of Night, launches February 23rd, 2025. There will be a virtual launch on the internet on March 2nd. And you guys can catch book 2 there. Book 3 should be out by around this time next year.
Okay, and I will probably link your website and everything to this video once I get it posted, hopefully today, which is the 21st, so people have a chance to hear about this.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and for those of you who are just listening, my website is octoberksantarelli.com, and you can find all of my books available in my shop online.
Okay, and your I'm sorry, bad with names. Night series. Damn it.
Nightfall.
Yes, Nightfall. It's like
Yeah.
it's yeah, my brain is so bad with names it deletes it right away. I'm like, brain stop. What book number are you at? What book is this?
I'm at 2, so the second one is launching. It's just a trilogy. The third one will be out within a year and wrap up the whole thing. I also have the Book of the Witch's Son, which is this one right here,
Mhm.
and the Book of the Witch's Son is a complete mini series of 4 novellas in one volume. So that's it. That's all you need. And that one is also available online.
All right. So we know where to find you, where to read, and thank you for being my very first guest.
I'm so excited. This was
Yes,
so much fun.
this was fun. Of course, you should always do things that are fun, right?
Like go and watch adaptations.
Yes, go watch adaptations, critique them, and then create your own. All right. If you've enjoyed this, let me see, I wrote it down. Please like, comment, and subscribe because I knew I was going to forget that if I didn't write it down. Thank you. Bye. No.
Bye.